Aisha has a rough week at work, genuinely rough, and on Friday she's scrolling and sees a bag she's been eyeing. $200. She hears herself think the exact sentence, "I deserve this." She buys it in about 11 seconds. Here's what that sentence actually did in those 11 seconds. It didn't evaluate whether she could afford it. It didn't compare it to anything else $200 could do. It just ended the conversation, instantly, before any of that could happen. Here's the number that should stop you mid-scroll. That exact phrase, some version of it, shows up before a meaningful share of unplanned purchases people later regret. Not because the thing was bad, but because the sentence itself was never actually doing the job it felt like it was doing. This isn't a video telling you that you don't deserve nice things, or that treating yourself is wrong. It's a video about a specific four-word sentence that quietly skips every actual financial question and replaces it with a feeling. Let me show you exactly how it works. My name is Alex, and today on Wealth Adjacent, we're taking apart the sentence that ends more budgets than any single purchase ever could. Quick disclaimer, not financial advice, just how this specific phrase functions psychologically. Let's meet Aisha. Generally careful with money, has a real budget, checks it regularly, genuinely tries to be intentional about spending. The phrase doesn't show up when she's being careless. It shows up specifically when she's tired, which is exactly what makes it so easy to miss as a pattern. Here's the actual mechanism. "I deserve this" isn't a financial argument at all. It's an emotional one, wearing the structure of a decision. It answers the question, have I earned some enjoyment? Which is almost always yes, everyone has earned some enjoyment. Instead of the actual question, does this specific purchase, at this specific price, make sense right now, given everything else this money could do? Here's the part that should make you sit up. Those are two completely different questions, and the phrase makes them feel like the same one. Nobody ever thinks I deserve this, but I can't afford it right now. The sentence and the financial check never actually run in the same moment, because the sentence is specifically built to end the moment before the check would happen, closing the decision before it's actually been made. This shows up hardest after a genuinely hard day, a hard week, because the phrase is doing real emotional work in that moment. It's not fake. The exhaustion is real and the desire for some kind of relief is completely legitimate. The problem isn't the feeling. It's that the feeling gets used as financial reasoning instead of just being felt and then handled separately, on its own terms. The specific tell is timing, and it's worth learning to notice. If the thought arrives before the price gets checked, before any comparison happens, it's doing the job of skipping the check entirely. If it arrives after a genuine, separate decision that the purchase makes sense, it's just a nice feeling attached to a decision already made properly, which is a completely different situation. There's a specific pattern worth naming around what usually triggers the phrase, since it's rarely random. It tends to follow a specific kind of day, one involving unusual effort, stress, or sacrifice, work deadlines, a hard conversation, a long stretch without a break, moments where the brain is specifically looking for some kind of counterbalance. The purchase becomes less about the item itself and more about needing proof that the hard thing was worth something, which is an understandable need that a $200 bag was never actually built to satisfy. There's also a comparison worth naming honestly. The same sentence almost never shows up before a genuinely planned purchase, something budgeted for weeks in advance, saved toward deliberately. It shows up specifically in the moment of impulse, which is itself a clue about what the phrase is actually doing. It's not describing genuine deservingness in any deep sense, it's marking the specific moment willpower is lowest. So here's the actual check, worth running the moment that sentence shows up. Notice it and then ask the boring question anyway. Does this fit the budget? Would I still want it tomorrow? Not just right now, in this exact emotional state. The feeling of deserving something and the financial answer are allowed to both be true. They're just not allowed to be the same question, answered by the same 11 seconds of feeling. A useful separate habit is a short pause, even just overnight, specifically for anything the phrase shows up attached to. If it still feels right the next day, once the specific emotional trigger has faded, that's real information, and probably a genuinely fine purchase. If it quietly stops mattering once the feeling passes, that's information too, and usually the more common outcome. It's worth being honest about the other side of this too. Genuine planned enjoyment matters, and budgeting zero room for anything that simply feels good is its own kind of unsustainable approach. The goal was never to eliminate the feeling of treating yourself. It's specifically to stop letting that feeling make the financial decision alone, without any of the actual questions getting asked at all. There's a specific version of this pattern worth naming around bigger purchases too, since the exact same sentence shows up there, just with more zeros attached. A car, a vacation, a renovation. The identical "I deserve this" logic can justify decisions with real, lasting financial consequences, not just a $200 bag, which means the habit of separating the feeling from the financial question matters even more as the dollar amount climbs, not less. It's also worth naming that this specific phrase gets actively reinforced by marketing, constantly, deliberately. Advertising for exactly this kind of purchase frequently uses the identical language directly. You deserve it. Treat yourself. Phrases engineered specifically to arrive at the exact moment someone's already primed to hear them. The sentence doesn't just occur naturally in someone's own head. It's also being fed to them, repeatedly, by an entire industry that profits specifically when the feeling wins without the question ever getting asked. So here's where we land. This isn't about never treating yourself. Real enjoyment, planned and budgeted for, is completely legitimate. Aisha started noticing the phrase specifically as a flag, not a stop sign, just a signal to actually run the real question before deciding, and found most of the time the answer was still yes, just now for a reason that actually held up the next morning too. The point was never that the feeling is wrong, it's that a feeling and a financial decision are two different things, and the sentence was specifically built to make them feel like one, in exactly the moment that made it hardest to tell the difference. Notice the sentence, then ask the real question anyway. If this helped, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, when's the last time you caught yourself saying it? I'll see you in the next one.